My name is Elizabeth Willett, Senior Fertility Herbalist with the Natural Fertility Company. We have a couple of websites and various social media accounts, but we're the naturalfertilityshop.com and naturalfertilityinfo.com. And many of you join regularly, but for those of you who are new or replay viewers, thank you for joining as well. We're here to talk about fertility health, all of which is fertility health, meaning menstrual cycles and periods and sperm health and egg health and all of the different things that are involved in healthy fertility, whether you are trying to conceive or not. So welcome. I'm glad you could come today. We're going to talk about irregular periods and irregular menstrual cycles. We've been getting a lot of questions lately about these things that happen for women, namely when their period isn't regular, often out of the blue. For some, it's continually not regular. And I wanted to talk about it. Give you reasons why that happens, common reasons why that happens, and some foundational steps for beginning to support a healthy cycle or the return of a healthy cycle and a healthy period, and hopefully keeping it that way, a few foundational steps. So again, welcome everybody. Let's jump right in. I think, as we grow up, we are taught as women to understand that our menstrual cycle, our period, we're taught menstrual cycle and period are kind of the same thing, but they really aren't. Please know that they're different. The cycle is from the start of your period until the start of the next period. And the period itself is just menstruation, which is the bleeding time during that month. But we're taught to believe that should happen monthly, every 28 days, every 30 days. We are taught to believe that it shouldn't be painful and it shouldn't be heavy and it shouldn't be, anything but red and all of that. And it should be rhythmic and constant and happen regularly throughout our lives from puberty to menopause. That really isn't the case for most women for a lot of reasons, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But oftentimes that becomes worrisome. The fact that we know we're supposed to have a period, we know what it's supposed to be like, and we've heard that textbook is 28 days in terms of our entire cycle. But when it's not that way, it's worrisome and can cause a lot of stress. And that's not actually how it should be. So it's important to understand that our menstrual cycles and periods might not be consistent month to month to month, but that doesn't mean you have a problem. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong necessarily. But there are cases where something should maybe be a concern. So we'll go into that in a little bit. We have a basic understanding of our menstrual cycle down, but we really are often unsure of what irregular looks like and means and when to be concerned. So I'm hoping that through the rest of this talk, we'll get into that, or I'll explain that and help you understand that a little bit better. So like I said, you're going to read in many places that a textbook menstrual cycle, which is from the start of one period to the start of the next, is 28 days. That doesn't happen very often for very many women. Trust me, know that. Ignore textbook and let's focus on what is usual and can be considered regular. The usual range of a healthy cycle can be anywhere from 21 to 35 days. That can be healthy. You can have a 35-day cycle, 36, 37, 34, 33, 25, and have a healthy cycle. That can be the case for you. With the average period being about 7 days. That can also vary. Some periods last 2 days and are still healthy, and others last 7 and they're still healthy. So ultimately what I need you to understand is that menstrual cycles from the start of your period to the start of the next period can be a variety of different lengths and still be healthy. And periods, the bleeding time, can be a variety of different number of days and still be healthy. What we need to focus on is that there is often pattern. So you're within, 28, 30, 31 days. It might vary some, but you're not fluctuating from a short cycle to a really long cycle. So what you want to focus on is that there's some bit of pattern, some bit of regularity. You have a healthy body overall, that your follicular phase, which is from the start of a period until ovulation, is roughly 12 to 14 days, and that your luteal phase from ovulation until the start of your next period is at least 12 days. 11 might be okay, 13 is probably fine, 14 is probably fine, but around that 12-day time frame is what most experts believe is healthy. The luteal phase should be around that length. And with all of this happening, hopefully there's not cause for concern, or you don't have to worry as much, right? This should happen month after month after month from puberty to menopause, like I said, but yet for a lot of people I know it doesn't, and that was what prompted me to come on and talk about this today. So how do you know if you have an irregular period? Because I've given you this time frame of length of days for a whole cycle and a period, how do you know if your period and your cycle are irregular? Your period, now this is bleeding time, could be considered irregular if all of a sudden you start bleeding way less or way more than you normally do. Then what is your normal? Your normal, because your normal is going to be very different from my normal and her normal and her normal and your sister's normal and your mom's normal and your grandma's normal. You can't base it on everybody else. Your period is yours, not anyone else's, and we're going to be different. So if your bleeding is substantially less or more than what you're used to, that could be considered an irregularity. If it's light and watery menstruation, that could be irregular. If it's really heavy, heavy means that you're bleeding around 5.5 tablespoons during your period. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when it comes to menstrual blood, that's a lot. If you're bleeding through heavy pads at night, if you're not able to control or do your daily activities because your bleeding is so heavy, that's an irregular period. What else about periods? If you have infrequent periods, so if you have a period one cycle and you don't the next, that could be considered an irregular period. If your bleeding is prolonged, if around 7 days is what most experts feel is okay. Some women will have an 8-day period, some women will have a 9-day period, and they're healthy and there's no other concern and the blood is bright red and everything else seems fine, and then that's their normal. But it's around, if you have a period that lasts longer than 7 days and you've got some other stuff going on that's showing you that it's irregular, or your whole entire cycle is irregular, or if you have a fertility health issue, then that's when there's probably a little bit of more of a concern. If your period's gone altogether, you have amenorrhea, you don't have a period at all, that would be an irregular period. And in some cases, mid-cycle spotting. It's often a sign of hormonal imbalance, but some women spot at ovulation. Ovulation spotting isn't a sign that you have an irregular period, but there are other times when mid-cycle spotting could be considered that. So how do you know if you have an irregular menstrual cycle? I'm talking about them in different terms. So if your menstrual cycle start date and end dates fluctuate month to month to month, or cycle to cycle to cycle, that would be irregular. If it fluctuates by several days, 1 or 2 days, 3 days even, isn't really considered irregular. But if it's like a week or 2 weeks, or if you go from a 28-day cycle to a 40-day cycle, that would be something that's irregular. It needs to be kind of a biggish jump. If the timing of ovulation changes from month to month, there is a ovulation with a 28-day cycle, right? That textbook that I just said forget about, should happen midway through, so around day 12 or 14. So if you figure out how long your entire cycle is and then divide it in half, there is a 2 to 3 day window in there. It could be 12 to 14, it could be 14 to 16, where ovulation could happen. So if ovulation happens during that mid-cycle window for you, 1 month, and then the next month happens on day 25, or some other day way late or way early, that would be considered an irregular menstrual cycle. If you don't ever have a period, like I said, that also would be perhaps a cause of an irregular cycle, but could be a sign of anovulation, a variety of different things. And if there are a number of days, the number of days between each period changes. So that again is like cycle length from day 1 to day 1. If one cycle is a little bit shorter, the next one is around the same time, the next one is around the same time, but all of a sudden this 4th cycle, it's really, really long, there's something else going on and there's an irregular cycle, or that would be considered an irregular cycle. So now you may be wondering, how does this happen? What causes all of this craziness to happen? First, I want to say that your cycle from month to month to month can vary a little bit here and there. If it's a couple of days shorter or longer, or your ovulation happens a day or 2 before or after it did, that's not often a cause for concern unless there are other signs and symptoms. you've got a fertility health issue that's been diagnosed, you have low hormones or high hormones or a thyroid health issue, something like that. So know that periods can fluctuate a little bit, and that doesn't mean that you're infertile. It doesn't mean that your periods are irregular. It doesn't mean that your cycle's irregular. It doesn't mean that there's a problem. There are a lot of things that can affect and cause irregular menstrual cycles and irregular periods, and I'm going to go into all of those next. There's quite a list. So for young women who are just starting to menstruate, puberty can be the cause of an irregular cycle. I've actually had a couple of really young girls who've just started getting their periods email in to the company lately, and they're concerned. First, it makes me sad that they're concerned that their fertility health is going to be affected years from now. But puberty, it just sometimes takes a while for the body to find its normal, to regulate on its own. And that can happen in puberty. It can also happen in perimenopause, the opposite end of the spectrum. So for women who are entering their mid to late 40s and later, your body's ability to make the hormones that keep you fertile naturally declines. That's something that happens to each and every female from the beginning of time. It's not something that you need to be scared of. I know it worries a lot of you because a lot of you are in that age range and still hoping to conceive naturally, and it's still possible. You know, if you're healthy and there aren't all these other extenuating circumstances preventing pregnancy. But anyway, perimenopause is another cause. Our bodies that naturally start to shift. It just means there's more work that needs to be done if you're still hoping to conceive. What else can cause irregular menstrual cycles and irregular periods? Birth control, including IUDs. You're going to read and you're going to hear from your doctor that IUDs shouldn't cause your period to be irregular. And I'm wondering if those doctors work with women after they're removed, because we do, and a lot of women have irregular cycles after IUDs are removed. So those aren't exempt from that birth control conversation. Fertility health issues, PCOS, endometriosis, uterine fibroids, even though it's rare, sometimes ovarian cysts can all cause irregular menstrual cycles and irregular periods, and certainly anovulation, which means lack of ovulation. You're not ovulating, which can happen with ovarian cysts and can happen with PCOS and can happen with a variety of other fertility health issues. Thyroid function impacts hormonal balance and overall health in a variety of ways, but in terms of fertility health, it can cause irregular menstrual cycles and irregular periods. And that's both hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, underactive and overactive. So thyroid health is really important to evaluate if you're having some of these problems and it hasn't been evaluated yet. Stress is a huge one. We're good at telling ourselves that we're able to handle our stress, and that's not always the case. I want you to be positive and figure out how to work through that, but stress has a really big impact on the menstrual cycle and the period as well. Excessive exercise or dramatic changes in your exercise routine. If you've just begun exercising more than you're used to, it can cause your period to shift or your menstrual cycle to shift. Dramatic weight loss and weight gain both do that as well. Being sedentary, if you're not moving at all, that has a great impact on the menstrual cycle and the period specifically. For some women, uterine structure, the formation of the uterus when they were in utero and when their uterus was growing as teeny weeny babes, there can be abnormal uterine structure or abnormalities of the uterus itself in that development phase of life. It's rare, but it has happened for some people. Medical procedures. There are a variety of medical procedures that are done inside the uterus, and if they leave behind scar tissue or damage the uterine lining in any way, that can cause your period to shift and your menstrual cycle to shift. Asherman syndrome, that's a syndrome where there's a lot of scar tissue within the uterus. I'm thinking procedures like it's possible, it's not often the case, but DNC or certainly ablation, if you've had uterine ablation, that really damages the uterine lining. There's a few more things I wanted to talk about in terms of what causes irregular menstrual cycles and irregular periods. Anything that could impact the health of the uterine lining could impact your period. So yeah, you've probably all been through some of those procedures and things and experienced that. Pelvic inflammatory disease can make things shift a little bit, and of course lack of circulation to the uterus. That can be, the causes of lack of circulation to the uterus happen for a variety of reasons, but oftentimes it's lack of nutrition, lack of movement, so you're sedentary, and lack of hydration. I'm not a doctor. No, I'm an herbalist. So thanks for asking. That brings up a good point, which I will touch on at the end. So now, after all of those causes, right, it's huge. What can you do about it? Naturally, there are some things. There are 5, did I write down 5? 4. I'm going to say 4 because I don't remember. 4 foundational steps that I think everyone should consider if you're worried about your cycle being irregular or your period being irregular, or if you just want to make sure they don't turn to irregular, right? These are all foundational things that can be really helpful for most any menstruating woman. First of all, and this touches on the doctor question, see your doctor to determine what the cause of your irregular cycle or period is. Excuse me. It's really going to help you choose a natural fertility program, choose the right herbs, supplements, and natural therapies, or work with a medical doctor or a specialist and your herbalist or natural fertility specialist, your entire team, if you know what the cause is, right? So first, do that. If you're worried, if you can't figure it out, ask for someone to help you figure it out, and your doctor's that one who's going to be able to do that. Next, it's important to address nutrition levels. So many times women have crazy periods, whether it's a lot of PMS or heavy bleeding or no flow at all, or really irregular periods, and they're not eating well. They're not getting enough nutrition. Excuse me. Sometimes all it takes to bring the menstrual cycle and the period back to balance and normal is making sure you're getting lots and lots and lots of nutrients every day. A whole food diet, as much healthy whole food as you can, plus a whole food multivitamin. A balanced diet. If you eat meat, have some red organic raw meat. It's got iron in it, which is really important for menstruating women. If you don't eat meat, find another source of iron. There aren't many things to eliminate aside from sugar, alcohol, caffeine, for some people, gluten, not everyone. I don't have a problem with gluten that I'm aware of. So anyway, just eat as whole food and healthy of a diet as you can. So we've already said, talk to your doctor, focus on your diet, and then take a look at your lifestyle. If your cycles are irregular and your periods are irregular, are you sedentary, perhaps not moving as much? Are you overdoing exercise? We do have a lot of women who are overdoing exercise for fear of gaining too much extra weight, or because they have gained weight and they want it to come off really fast, and they just go all gung-ho, and it becomes too much, and their periods and their cycles shift a little bit. And have you checked in with your stress levels? Are you doing something to support your stress, a healthy stress response to get you out of stressful situations? We've talked about stress before. I think you probably all have a good handle on that. And if not, there's other videos out there from me. There's information on our website. You could talk to your friends, right? And then make sure your reproductive organs are getting enough circulation. That was kind of the last cause that I shared. So focus on that. Take a daily walk, a brisk walk outside if you can be outside. Even in the colder weather, we can bundle up and go out and walk, most of us, if you can. Try fertility massage. There are some fertility massage therapists out there. Our company's founder, Heather Rodriguez, created self-fertility massage. It's amazing. I have worked with so many women who've started using self-fertility massage who've had incredible positive period shifts and cycle shifts from just massaging 3 times a week. It's amazing. And then I'm curious if you all have heard about or know about fertility yoga. I know not everyone's into yoga, but this is a stellar yoga program. I truly feel like it's probably one of the best products, natural fertility therapies that we have. We have a fertility yoga program that is designed with yoga poses to address each phase of the menstrual cycle, including during your period. So often women don't want to move during their period, and if your period is heavy, that happens even more. But this yoga sequence or series of yoga poses has been designed to be doable through all parts of the menstrual cycle and be helpful in that way. So ladies, there's no one-size-fits-all program for irregular cycles or irregular periods. It doesn't look the same for everyone, and that's what makes our jobs hard. We have to become detectives to figure out why it's happening. We need you to go to your healthcare provider to have help in finding if there's a more deep-seated cause that we perhaps wouldn't see because we're just asking questions about diet and lifestyle and exercise and what herbs and supplements you're taking, and have you traveled. That's something I forgot. Travel can make your menstrual cycle and your period shift. That would be another cause. So I really urge you to learn about natural ways to regulate your cycle. These natural options support the body's ability to maintain healthy hormonal balance on its own without impacting your hormone levels in any other way. You're not putting hormones into your body. You're encouraging the systems that make and coordinate, where the hormones go to be healthy and to work at their best. And beyond those 4 foundational steps that I just talked about that I'm going to go over again, talk to your doctor, focus on your diet, check in with yourself in terms of your lifestyle, exercise, and stress, and make sure you've got adequate circulation to your uterus and all of your reproductive organs for a healthy cycle and period. We have other things you can do as well. So beyond those 4 foundational steps, there's other things you can consider too. But again, knowing what the cause is going to help us get you to information that will help you choose the natural therapies, herbs, and supplements that will support that cause, right? Does that make sense? So if you have an irregular menstrual cycle or period and it's really a concern for you, reach out to us. We've got guides on all of this information. We and the herbalists on staff, Sarah Abernathy and I, can help or can ask you questions to help you maybe figure out what's going on. Talk to your doctor about it. And then if you want a natural approach to what's going on, which I'm assuming most of you do because that's why you're here watching the Natural Fertility Shop or info, we can get you some help. If you want one-on-one support, we have natural fertility consultations. Otherwise, if you email in or contact us, we can get you to guides that will tell you all about everything to consider. Our number one goal is to educate you. That's what we're here for. We want to educate you and empower you to make natural fertility health choices, natural menstrual cycle health choices, and natural period health choices, because we don't want you dreading your period every month. We don't want you on cycle day 40 freaking out because it's cycle day 40. We want to help you either understand your menstrual cycle and your period are perhaps normal, or there is a point at which you should check in with your doctor and be a little bit more concerned. So we're here for you. I want you to know that. Reach out to us. We've got many avenues to get a hold of us. So thank you again for joining me. I don't want you to be worried about your periods. If you are, seek support. We can be part of your team in helping you with support. Yeah, that's about all I had for today. So thank you again. I hope you have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.